Hello, my name is Kathryn Sharples and I am Vice President for Open Access at Wiley. I'm sorry not to be with you in person today, but I am really pleased to have this opportunity to talk to you about open access and about some of the ways that Wiley has been leading in the transition to a more open form of scholarly communication. Of course, open access is not a new concept or a new movement. It has been a topic of discussion and debate for a number of years now. In fact, this year marks the 20th anniversary of the Budapest Open Access Initiative, which together with the Berlin Declaration on Open Access signed back in 2003 have been two of the galvanizing forces for change in the scholarly publishing landscape. In the last 20 years, or in the 20 years since the signing of those declarations, we've seen a real proliferation of policies at the institutional level, at the funder level, and at the national and international level. Indeed, there are now over 1,100 open access policies in place around the world, and all are essentially aimed at delivering both greater and immediate access to research and at removing the barriers to the sharing and reuse of research. Many of those policies are born out of a frustration at the pace of change, or perhaps a lack of pace of change in transitioning to a more open future. Plan S from Coalition S is perhaps the most recent and high-profile example of a policy developed in response to frustration at the lack of speed of transition to open access. Plan S was developed by a group of national research funders and charitable foundations such as the Wellcome Trust and the Gates Foundation, and they came together in 2018 with the support of the European Research Council and Science Europe, with a stated goal of accelerating the transition to full and immediate open access, and the desire to achieve that goal by 2024, just 2 years from now. The global health crisis, of course, of the past 2 years has also really highlighted the importance of immediate access to the latest research and the importance of the need for that research to be as widely shared and as discoverable as possible. The COVID-19 pandemic has also highlighted the importance of research being published under the most permissive of Creative Commons licenses so that it can be built upon in order to help accelerate the pace of scientific discovery and progress, something that's clearly critical when trying to find solutions to some of the world's biggest challenges. So, how far away are we from full and immediate access to all of the world's research? Well, currently, a number of independent industry reports estimate that open access publishing accounts for over 30%, just over 30% of global publishing output. And certainly in the context of that Plan S goal, there remains much work to be done, more work to do. Well, one of the ways we've delivered growth in our open access output has been through the launch and the continued growth of our program of fully open access journals. We recently celebrated the 10th anniversary of Wiley's Open Access Journal program. And over the past 10 years, we've grown from a whole 2 fully open access journals in 2011, I think in the subject areas of neuroscience and ecology, to more than 450 fully open access titles. Approximately half of those titles came about through our acquisition, or came to Wiley through our acquisition of the fully open access publisher Hindawi at the beginning of last year. Together, Wiley and Hindawi are now the 3rd largest open access publisher in the world. And we've built up our portfolio of open access titles in partnership with some of the leading societies in the world. And indeed, we're really proud to partner with some of the leading universities and associations, including the Chinese Medical Association and Tsinghua University Press in China, but other associations and institutions around the world to develop and to launch new open access titles. Of the 240 or so Wiley published open access titles, around 75% of them are published in partnership with societies or institutions. And they really span a huge range of subject disciplines, from ecology, which I've already mentioned, through to microbiology, cardiology, public health, from the material sciences through to the earth sciences. And perhaps unsurprisingly, our largest share of portfolio is undoubtedly in the life and the health science subject disciplines, but we've really rapidly grown our open access footprint in the physical sciences and the engineering disciplines too, in particular through our recent acquisition of Hindawi. We recognize that the impact factor is perhaps an imperfect measure of the quality or the prestige of the journal, but it's absolutely still an important element for authors deciding whether and where to publish their research. And we're really proud to have developed a portfolio of fully open access journals that have impact factors ranging from 1 to somewhere north of 25. Some of the titles in our portfolio, some of the titles in our portfolio are broad scope titles, high volume titles aiming at providing a home for incremental advances in research. Others are much smaller, more focused, and highly selective in their acceptance criteria. My point here is that we're really building an open access portfolio to provide a home for all areas and all types of research. Between Wiley and Hindawi, we've launched hundreds of open access titles, and we will continue to launch new OA journals where we can demonstrate opportunities to address new and emerging areas of research. We've also taken on journals from other publishers. Some of our society partnerships have come to us from other publishers and have decided to move their open access titles to Wiley because they like what we've been doing with our open access program. The largest of those moves happened last year with the arrival of the IET, the Institute for Engineering Technologies journals. They moved 42 titles in total, the majority of which were flipped from the subscription model to open access upon coming to Wiley. And in addition to those IET journals, we've transitioned more than 50 more open titles to the open access model over the last 10 years. And we fully expect to see more of this activity in the coming years as we look to transition more of our hybrid journals to the fully open access model. In fact, we're currently working to finalize the list of journals that will transition to open access for 2023 for next year. And there's a real diversity of disciplines represented in that list. I've talked very, very quickly about journal launches and about flipping journals to open access. I would say the other key mechanism or tool that we've used for delivering more open access has been the introduction and the evolution of transformative agreements, or TAs, between publishers and consortia. These agreements come in many different shapes and sizes, but their key characteristic is a shift in the focus and the payment from subscription or reading to payment for open access or publishing. These agreements remove the requirements for authors to find and secure ways to pay article publication charges themselves. And in that sense, you could argue that they have effectively kind of leveled the playing field for authors across all disciplines. They've made open access a reality for authors in all subject disciplines. So under a transformative agreement, open access is no longer the preserve of the author with a research grant, but is a realistic option for a lead author with an affiliation to one of the institutions covered by one of these agreements. We signed the first one of these agreements in the Netherlands and then with Austria back in 2016, 2017. But we've really committed much greater focus to this model in the last few years, particularly with the signing in 2019 of the groundbreaking agreement in Germany with Project Deal, and with significant agreements here in the UK and in Northern Scandinavia. And although those agreements started out very much the preserve of Northern European countries, at the last count, we had signed, I think, 35 agreements with institutions around the world. Since the start of this year alone, we've been able to announce agreements in Japan, in the Republic of Korea, in Australia, and with government departments and institutions in North America. I've included this slide here as a simple means of illustrating not just the overall growth in the percentage of open access publishing at Wiley in recent years. In 2018, our publishing, about 12% of our publishing output was open access compared to the just under 30% last year, but also as an important way of illustrating the impact or perhaps the contribution that these large consortia or institutional wide agreements have made to us, to the transition. Hopefully you can see on your screens that the green and the black segments in these concentric circles illustrate the impact that these agreements have had on our hybrid and our gold OA output. If you look at the outer circle, 2021, you can see, as I've mentioned, almost 30% of our output was open access, but of that, it was about 11.5%, those two green and black segments combined, that were open access as a result of one of these transformational agreements. Back in 2018, that percentage was just 1%. So my point here is that transformational agreements have been a very effective way of delivering on the transition to open access, or a very effective way of a very effective route to providing more access to research. They're not the only route for delivering open access. I've talked very briefly about journal launches and about flipping, but they are certainly a very effective one. So what next? I realise I'm probably over time, but how are we planning to build on the progress that we've already made, and what does the future look like? Well, we're committed to an acceleration of our transformative deal strategy in order to meet the needs and the expectations of customers who are looking to make their own transition to open access. So you can expect to see more agreements and more open access articles via those agreements. We're also committed to the continued launch of new open access journals to address the evolving research landscape, so that you can expect to see more new open access journals in all disciplines and at all levels of impact. We're also really committed to flipping more journals across all subject areas and at every level of research impact. And we're also committed critically to the exploration of new models of open access to address authors in regions with less ready access to funding to cover article publication charges. We've got a long way to go there, but that's something that we really need to make progress on. And with all of that, of course, comes a continued focus on improving the publishing process, on making it quicker and easier for authors to get the trusted, peer-reviewed, connected version of their research out into the wider world. We've come a really long way in the last 10 years since we launched our first fully open access journals, and we're really looking forward to the next 10 years with determination and with enthusiasm to do the work required to deliver ever greater levels of open access in the future. Thanks very much for listening.